The fog has been lifting for a while now, not all at once. That is not how clarity works, in landscapes or in life. It has been lifting gradually, almost imperceptibly, over the weeks and months of Phase 3's trial and error. One experiment revealing something true, another revealing something equally important about what is not true. The questions getting more specific, the peace beginning to settle in certain directions and remain unsettled in others. The fruit appearing quietly at first, then more undeniably. And now you can almost see it, the landscape that was always there, beneath the searching of Phase 2 and the experimenting of Phase 3. Not a vague impression anymore, something specific, something with a shape, something that, when you look at it honestly in the quiet of your morning prayer, feels less like a possibility and more like a recognition. That recognition, quiet, specific, increasingly difficult to dismiss, is Phase 4 beginning to speak. And today we are going to learn how to listen to it clearly, name it confidently, and begin structuring our lives around it with genuine intention. Welcome. Whether you have walked through this entire series with us from Phase 1, or you are just discovering this channel today, we are so deeply glad you are here for this particular video. This one has been a long time coming. For those just finding us, this is the Silver Sanctuary, a place for believers navigating retirement with intention, scripture, and honest conversation. We have walked together through all 4 of Dr. Riley Moynes' phases of retirement. Today we are in Phase 4, reinvention, and specifically in the moment when the calling that Phase 3 began to confirm finally becomes clear enough to name and live from. If you are new, links to every previous series are in the description below. We'd encourage you to start at the beginning. Before we go further, if this channel has been meaningful to you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Give this video a like if it helps, and leave a comment. We read every single one, and today's question especially. We want to hear your answer. Let us talk about what this moment actually feels like. Because clarity, when it arrives in Phase 4, rarely announces itself with fanfare. It tends to arrive quietly, almost matter-of-factly, in the middle of an ordinary day. And the first sign that it has arrived is often not excitement, but recognition. Recognition is different from revelation. Revelation feels like something entirely new, breaking in from outside. Recognition feels like something you already knew, somewhere deep, being finally confirmed by everything you have experienced. Like coming home to a place you have never physically been, but somehow always known. This is consistent with how Scripture describes the movement of calling throughout the biblical narrative. God rarely gives his people a calling that feels completely alien to who they are. More often, he confirms something already woven into them, something present in their gifts, their history, their particular way of seeing the world, that the earlier seasons of life have been gradually revealing. Think about the people you know who are most clearly living in their Phase 4 calling. When you listen to them describe it, there is almost always a moment where they say something like, "Looking back, I can see how everything was preparing me for this. Not that the path was obvious in advance, but that, in retrospect, the preparation is unmistakable. The career experiences that seemed unrelated at the time, the phase 2 grief that stripped away what was not truly them, the phase 3 experiments that tested and calibrated and confirmed. All of it woven together, pointing toward this particular expression of purpose in this particular season. Dr. Riley Moynes observed this pattern consistently across the thousands of retirees he studied. The Phase 4 retirees who described the deepest satisfaction were not the ones who arrived at their calling through a single dramatic moment of certainty. They were the ones who, looking back, had traced the thread of preparation through every previous season, and who had the courage to follow that thread to where it was pointing, even when the destination wasn't yet fully visible. So how do you know when clarity has actually arrived, rather than simply another Phase 3 experiment feeling temporarily exciting? We want to offer you 3 honest markers of genuine Phase 4 clarity, distinct from what we described in Phase 3's discernment markers, and important to understand before we talk about naming and structuring. Clarity marker 1. You stop auditioning it. In Phase 3, every experiment is being tested. You are watching it carefully, asking whether it will fold, whether it will bear fruit, whether the peace and joy are sustained. There is an evaluative quality to your engagement with it. In Phase 4, that evaluative quality quietly disappears. You are no longer asking whether this is the thing. You simply find yourself doing it, planning it, returning to it, building on it, without the constant background question of whether it deserves your continued investment. Clarity marker 2. Other people begin to name it for you. One of the most reliable external signs of a genuine Phase 4 calling is that the people around you begin to identify it before you have fully claimed it yourself. They start saying things like, "You should do more of this. You are so clearly gifted here. Have you ever thought of making this the center of what you do?" When the people who know you best and love you most begin pointing in the same direction independently, that is not coincidence. That is confirmation. Clarity marker 3. You can describe it simply. Phase 3. Experiments are often hard to explain. There is a searching, circling quality to how you talk about them. Phase 4 clarity tends to produce a simplicity of description, not because the calling is shallow, but because it has been refined by the experiments into something essential. You can say, in 1 or 2 sentences, what you do and why it matters. The complexity is still there, but it has a center now, a clear core that you can name without having to qualify everything around it. Why do people hesitate to name their Phase 4 calling? We have observed a few consistent reasons across the retirement landscape. Some hesitate out of false humility, a sense that claiming a calling sounds presumptuous, or that they are not significant enough for God to have given them something specific to do in this season. Some hesitate out of fear. If they name it and it doesn't fully materialize, they will have to face the disappointment of a named failure rather than the gentler ambiguity of an unnamed possibility. and some simply haven't been given the biblical framework that makes confident naming feel legitimate. Acts 9:15. The Lord said to Ananias, "Go. This man is my chosen instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and their kings, and to the people of Israel." This is God naming Paul's calling for him, specifically, concretely, without hedging or qualifying. Not Paul might be useful in some general way, but this man is my chosen instrument for this specific purpose. God names his people's callings specifically, not in vague general terms that could apply to anyone, but in language that is particular to this person, this season, this set of gifts and experiences and relationships. And when he names them, he does so with confidence, not tentative suggestion. This is your permission, grounded in Scripture, not in self-confidence, to name your calling with the same specificity. Not I might do something with mentoring, but I am called to walk alongside newly retired believers through the identity questions of Phase 2. Not I want to do something creative, but I am called to create content that gives language to the grief and hope of the retirement journey. The specificity is not arrogance. It is faithfulness to what has been revealed through Phase 3's discernment. And it is the first practical step of Phase 4. Proverbs 3:5 and 6 anchors the confidence of naming in the right source. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. The confidence of Phase 4 naming is not confidence in your own abilities or certainty about every detail of the path ahead. It is confidence in the one who has been preparing you across every season, confirming through peace and fruit and sustained joy, and who promises to make the path straight for those who submit to him. And Isaiah 30:21 gives us the assurance that the naming is not a one-time declaration, but an ongoing guided conversation. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, "This is the way, walk in." God does not give you the calling and then leave you to figure out the details alone. He guides the walking. Naming opens the door, and the guidance continues as you step through it. Here is where Phase 4 gets genuinely practical, because naming the calling, as important as that step is not the same as living from it. The shift from "I know what I'm called to" my actual daily life reflects that calling requires intentional structure. And building that structure is the work of the first weeks and months of Phase 4. Ephesians 4:1 gives us the foundational posture for this work. Live a life worthy of the calling you have received, not a life organized around everything else with the calling fitted in, where it can find space. A life worthy of the calling, structured, prioritized, and protected, so that what God has confirmed gets the best of your time and energy, rather than whatever is left over. Live a life worthy of the calling you have received, not a life organized around everything else with the calling fitted in, where it can find space. A life worthy of the calling, structured, prioritized, and protected, so that what God has confirmed gets the best of your time and energy, rather than whatever is left over. Structure 1. Protected prime time. Every person has a time of day when they are most alert, most creative, most fully present. And in retirement, for the first time, you actually have the freedom to assign that time to what matters most rather than to an employer's schedule. In Phase 4, your calling gets your prime time, not your leftover time, not the hours after everything else has been attended to. Most of us, that prime time is the morning, and this connects directly back to the morning rhythm we built all the way back in Phase 1. The unhurried hours of prayer and scripture and intentional presence before the day claims your attention. In Phase 4, the morning rhythm expands to include not just the devotional anchor, but the actual work of the calling. Your writing, your teaching, your mentoring, your creating, whatever form your Phase 4 takes, gets the first and best hours. Structure 2, a community of accountability. Phase 4 callings pursued in isolation tend to lose momentum over time. Not because the calling isn't real, but because accountability to other people is one of the most powerful structural forces available to human beings. In Phase 4, identifying 2 or 3 people who know your calling, believe in it, and will ask you regularly how it is going. That community becomes part of the structure that sustains the calling through the seasons when motivation alone is not enough. This might be a small group at church that becomes the place where you regularly share what you are building. It might be 1 or 2 friends who meet with you monthly and ask the hard questions. What did you do this month toward the calling? What got in the way? What do you need to do differently? It might be a mentor who has navigated their own Phase 4 and can speak to what you are experiencing from genuine understanding. Structure 3, boundaries that protect the calling. This is the one most retirees underestimate in the early weeks of Phase 4, because the freedom of retirement makes it easy to say yes to everything. Every request, every social opportunity, every good and worthy use of your time gets a yes, because there is no external structure forcing a no. And before long, the calling, which was supposed to have your prime time and your best energy, is being crowded out by an accumulating collection of good but not primary commitments. Phase 4 requires the discipline of the protective no, not a selfish no, not an unavailable no, but a discerning no that says, I am stewarding something specific in this season, and I need to protect its place in my life in order to be faithful to what God has confirmed. That kind of no is not a failure of generosity. It is faithfulness to the calling that generosity might otherwise inadvertently undo. Structure 4, regular review and recalibration. Phase 4 is not a static destination. It is a living, growing season that continues to develop as you deepen your investment in the calling. Building in a regular rhythm of review, monthly or quarterly, where you honestly assess what is working, what needs adjustment, and where the fruit is and isn't appearing, keeps the structure responsive rather than rigid. This review rhythm is also where you stay attentive to the ongoing guidance that Isaiah 30:21 promised. The voice that continues to say, this is the way, even as the path develops, details you couldn't have seen at the beginning. Phase 4 is a living conversation with God about an unfolding calling not a one-time decision that requires no further discernment. Let us close with something very practical. 3 concrete, faithful steps for your first week of genuinely living from your Phase 4 calling, rather than still searching for it or planning for it without yet inhabiting it. Step 1. Write your calling statement this week, not a mission statement in the corporate sense, not something polished for public consumption. A personal, honest 1 or 2 sentence description of what you believe God has confirmed as your Phase 4 calling, written for an audience of 1, yourself before God. Something like, I am called to walk alongside believing women in the retirement transition, giving language to their grief and hope through honest scripture-rooted conversation. Or, I am called to mentor young professionals in our church community, investing the wisdom of my career decades into people who are 30 years behind me in the journey. Write it, date it, put it somewhere you will see it in your morning prayer time, not as a rigid declaration that can never be refined, but as the best, most honest articulation of what has been confirmed through everything Phase 3 revealed. This is the fog fully lifted, named on paper. Step 2. Design 1 week of prime time around the calling. Just 1 week to start. Take your calendar for the coming week and block your prime time hours. Whatever time of day is your best, for the actual work of the calling, not planning it, not thinking about it, doing it. Writing the first paragraph, making the first call, preparing the first lesson, beginning the first conversation. Whatever the smallest, most concrete expression of the calling looks like, give it your prime time for 1 week and observe what that investment reveals. 1 week of intentional primetime investment will tell you more about the practical shape of your Phase 4 structure than months of planning ever could. The goal is not a perfect week. The goal is a real week, one where the calling actually happened, even imperfectly, even in small ways, in the best hours you had to give. Step 3. Tell 1 person your calling statement this week. Not a crowd, not a social media announcement. 1 person. Someone who knows you, loves you, and will hold you to it with both encouragement and honest accountability. Tell them what you wrote. Tell them what the first week of prime time looked like. Ask them to check in with you in 30 days. This step is deceptively simple and enormously powerful. Named things become real in ways that unspoken things rarely do. Spoken calling becomes accountable calling, and accountable calling becomes sustained calling, which is exactly the kind of calling Phase 4 is designed to produce. The fog has lifted. What was always prepared in advance, woven into you through decades of living and working and grieving and experimenting, is now visible, specific, named, ready to be lived from. This is Phase 4, not a reward for having navigated the earlier phases correctly, because none of us navigate them perfectly. A gift. God's design for a life that has been honest enough to grieve, courageous enough to experiment, patient enough to wait for the confirmation, and faithful enough to name what has been confirmed. Leave a comment below and tell us, What's the calling that is becoming clear for you in this season? Name it, even briefly, even imperfectly. We read every single comment, and the courage it takes to name it here may be exactly the first step of living from it. If today's video helped you take that step, please give it a like and share it with someone in Phase 4 who needs this framework. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. Wednesday, we are going even deeper into legacy-minded living and building something that outlasts this season. It is one of the most important conversations of the entire series. Until Wednesday, keep cultivating your garden. The harvest is real. God bless.